I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And my apologies, we're having some technical challenges, so I'm trying to pull up the agenda so I can see it. I don't know, are we able to pull it up on the big screen or are we not? How have we done that in the past?
I haven't pulled it up on the big screen in the past. What I could do is give share screen ability. Oops.
Yeah, I can share my screen. The problem I think is that I'm not, maybe the network is failing me. Oh yeah.
There we go.
Oh, there's Chris.
Yeah, if you're able to pull it up, then you will be able to do share screen now. That's how we used to do it. I can also look to see if I can find the agenda and pull it up.
I can't do that network, I think is the problem.
Okay, let me see if I can.
It's not bringing up the password for me. Okay, I apologize everybody, we're just working out some bugs. So I know that the very first thing on our agenda for tonight is of course to read the mission, so Melinda, I'll ask you to do that if you're able to get the documents open.
Haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
Okay, but I will read the mission. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the mission for the Police Advisory Board is to offer advice to the St. Albans Police Department for the successful implementation of 21st century policing strategies and to assist the police department in following the established roadmap as amended by City Council.
Yeah, no, I made a mistake on the agenda. We actually, no, I think I'm okay now. I got it to pull up, so
okay.
I apologize. We will open.
Sorry. Just in case it will take
Do we have any
chapter.
I don't even think we have any public. Do we have any public? To open this up for public comment or review on items not on the agenda, or on the agenda, excuse me. Okay, hearing none, we've already managed the mission, so thank you for that. Next up, we have the approval of February and April's meeting minutes, because it's been a little bit since we've convened. So can I have a motion to approve those 2 minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
A second? Thank you. Any discussion, changes, or comments on those minutes? Okay, all in favor of approving them as they stand?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The minutes are approved. Thank you. Oh. I think I have to speak on first, just for National Night Out. Yes, okay, thank you. So, National Night Out, we just wanted to take a second. The event happened in August. Thank you. As I'm falling apart very technologically. The event happened in August, and it was originally going to be part of our agenda discussion. If we met in August, we didn't, so we wanted to take a minute now to discuss that event and the follow-up, and I'll just start that discussion by saying I was able to attend. I was there both in a professional capacity and capacity as a member of the community, and I guess a third reason as the chair of this committee. And the difference between last year and this year was incredible. The park was alive. It looked like everybody was engaging as they felt comfortable. I saw a lot of diversity in the park this year as compared to last year. And so I just want to give kudos to Chief, and I want to do it twice. There we go. And also I think it was Lieutenant Talley and Lieutenant Weatherby who planned that event.
They organized it along with Restorative Justice with Harmony.
Excellent. And so I thought it was an amazing event. I don't know if others on the committee had a chance to go and have any feedback.
I just want to note too that it was a beautiful event. There was great attendance. There was a lot of interaction. There was a ton of positive feedback that came back my way after the event too. So I think it was a huge success. I only see it getting better and better, but I think that everybody who attended was well received and had a really good time, and it brought the community together. I heard a lot of people saying that it was so nice to be back together in person.
Yeah.
So yeah, and plus I think you know, between the PD and restorative justice, they outdid themselves with the food, with the bells and whistles, and then the booth holders. Chris was there with voices. There's just a lot of community partners tabling, so it was a wonderful event. So thank you to everybody who put the effort into making it happen. And we now have the agenda on the screen for those who don't have one in front of them.
I just wanted to say that too, is that this year I saw a lot more interaction from the police department, mingling in the crowd instead of help over there by the food. In past years, it's been gathered there and not mingling, and that happened this year.
I mean, I don't think
Thank
it was
you.
I don't think it was as much of us pushing that out either. I think it was just our comfort level was a little different this year, having come off COVID for one and for two. Many of them weren't around. This was their first national night out because there were a lot of them were officers.
That's true.
And it was just different vibe. I think that we did put it out too, but I think it was just different vibe all around. The only thing that didn't come was the helicopter was supposed to land, and that's why we moved it back to the park. Originally we had a Black Hawk landing.
Right.
That was all planned. That was the only thing that kind of fell apart for us.
Yeah.
Well, if you didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
But we
You
went
didn't
through a
miss
lot of work to get that set up, and then the last minute got yanked. So next year maybe.
Wow, that would be, I've been part of medical chopper landings before, and it's no small feat to get that organized, so.
It would have been nice for particularly the kids to see it.
Yeah. Well, my kids weren't able to come this year because everybody was still recovering, but so they were a little angry that there was the water slide that they saw
Yeah.
pictures of
that
it
was
on
fun.
Facebook, and
Yes.
then I didn't bring them. So
There's one other thing too, I realize now looking at the agenda, and I don't know if I could just piggyback it onto this, but the PD also supported us in the recovery block party on September 3rd, so that was a first of, there historically was a block party in June. We pushed it to September to make it to honor Recovery Month, and there was a lot of people that wanted to see that block party come back and be big, and at the same time, when it came time to ask for a little bit of help, there was like not a lot of people, and Lieutenant Weatherby just happened to be one of those very few people that like showed up to planning meetings and helped us access a ton of stuff. Grills from the PD and get here to get table. Just we had a lot of support, and the PD was great. And then Officer Garrett was there with the K9, which was so cool and so fun. And there was a young lady that was very vulnerable, struggling with a number of things, including homelessness and living in a tent, who was pointed my way from him after having spent like 15 minutes talking to him and getting support. So it was just nice because that's usually my motive, is to connect with people who need resources even more than, you know, partners and whatnot, just because that's the reason we do what we do. So that was a fantastic event, and there's no way I could have pulled that off without Jason's help. So that was huge.
Well, and I think these events, you know, we talked about early on in this meeting about wanting to create spaces where people could come and interact with law enforcement, particularly SAPD. And I think both of these events and there's others I know that will come up in the community are great ways to do that, so people can move in and pull back on their own terms, which we know is important to our community. So kudos on 2 events that were well done. I did not make it to the recovery block party, unfortunately, but I saw it briefly from the window of a passing car, so it looked like it had great attendance and it was a good time. So
Can I add to that real quick?
yeah, please.
Just if there's no opening. So on the events, we're at one right now, the Autism Care Partners, which is opening tonight for those of you that don't know, because it's actually in for St. Albans. But Care Partners are a permanent location on Lebanon Drive, which I think is great. The governor's there as we speak. Tim Smith is there as our mayor. 5 Lebanon Drive, and tonight is their first night. So we're there. The Buddy Walk was this Sunday. We were there for that, for the autism as well. We're doing a career fair. If anybody knows anybody looking for a job in law enforcement, there's not just us. The hospital is going to be there. Corrections is going to be there. All law enforcement agencies from the county are going to be there. We're inviting other agencies or businesses. We're going to be in this building October 19th, but doing a coffee with the cop October 20th. We're doing a chili cook-off to benefit Martha's October 26th. Then, of course, Halloween trunk or treat October 31st at the PD. And that's October and September. And then November, we have a bunch of things lined up. So we have a lot of things coming. Jason Weatherby, because his name keeps coming up, that's kind of what we're transitioning him into, is taking the lead on most of the community stuff. That's kind of where his heart is and has been for the last couple of years, but we're freeing up, as much as we can't afford to free up anybody, we're freeing him up to spearhead more of that stuff. So
And I know
He's very, very good at it. And
Mm-hmm.
we
That's
talked
really
about
nice to do, so.
including other officers in this,
Yes.
and given that transition, I wonder if he's someone who could, you know, become a regular attendee as he is allowed,
He would be
able
very
to,
good at it.
allowed as a wrong word, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He was very good.
Yeah.
He's attended some of the BEI meetings, more of their executive meetings, I guess you could say. And I think he attended one of their committee meetings, but he is good at being a good representative of the department, but he's also going to bring other officers to try to mentor them into these
Yes.
roles as
Great.
well. It can't just be him and I going to these meetings, because
Right.
him and I are going to be here forever. And nor should we be doing all these meetings. Other people have to have buy-in, and the way to get that is to mentor them into these spots. So anyway, he's spearheading all of these things, and there's going to be a lot of these coming up. So.
I
We've got-
presented with him at a Caring Communities panel, and he did a very nice job. And spoke very eloquently of the partnership and what he's trying to do for the
Yeah,
community.
he's done a lot.
We got a lot of nice feedback for him from the BEI. There was someone who's gonna join us for public comment and wanted to provide this feedback, so I don't wanna steal their thunder, but, the long and short of it is that he made that group feel very safe, recognized their asks so that they could feel safe, and they really appreciated that, and they trusted him immensely after that, so, good feedback for him all around, so that's great.
And I guess just to close out the events, one more. So this Friday, September 30th, is the Coming Together Substance Use Summit, Addiction Summit, at the Champlain Valley Expo. And we've got St. Albans Police Department. Chief Lamont is going to be in one of the breakout rooms. So from 10 to 2:30 are the booths and breakout rooms. And he's going to be in one of the breakout rooms. Sam's going to be there as well with NCSS. And then Nick Tebbets, who had been here in the past with Cooper, one of the troopers. And then for the summit itself, Dr. Mark Levine is going to open us out, but then we've got a slate of summit presenters, and again, Chief Lamont's going to be on that too. So participation in events has been extremely strong lately, and it's really refreshing and exciting.
Well, as a person that follow other police departments in different areas, when I heard about the interaction, the new, they keep saying new, but how I heard how the police are now interacting with the community, it really warmed my heart, because this is where most of the bigger cities are going now, where they have football and they do baseball, teaching like single mothers, if they have sons. The police department in, of our place, Bedside, Brooklyn, now have a league where one officer on his day off, he volunteered to do 4 hours clinic for these single mothers with their sons, to get them, you know, a father figure and things to do with a man. Yes. So there's a police who are going now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's more community orientated.
I will say, I wasn't able to participate in the St. Albans National Night Out, but I participated in the Swanton National Night Out, and I feel like, you know, just the larger law enforcement theme, it was very well attended, and seemed to be a great community event and pulled a lot of people in, so I just think that
Yeah,
speaks
Swan always
volumes.
does well, and so does Milton up here in
Yeah,
general.
Milton does a good one too.
Even Burlington had a good one. I was
Yeah,
like, oh,
good.
yeah.
We were at the Swan one also.
Well, I think I just fell out of the meeting.
You're still here with us.
But the next thing on our agenda was to talk about a couple of policies. They're not due for review. We don't need to approve them, but we know, you know, the news is always an exciting gauge of what's happening both locally, regionally, and nationally. And just wanting to make sure that we were recentered and that the public recognizes that SAPD has these two policies in place, a use of force policy and a duty to intervene policy. And Chief, I know we've reviewed and approved them, but if you can just give us a quick rundown of the expectation if use of force is witnessed by another officer, and what and how and when use of force is deployed in the SAPD.
So the use of force policy were governed or mandated by the state of Vermont. That was one of the 2 or 3 they have that are now pushed down by their state policies. So we are forced to adopt them. There's nothing wrong with that. This is a really good policy. We adopted in October 2021, so about a year ago is when we pushed it out. We had to go through a training, a policy training to make sure we got it out to all of our officers. It's very similar to what we had out anyway. So this use of force policy is pretty basic per se. But they put it out so that every department in the state of Vermont is operating under the same use of force policy. And I think they did it just because there were some departments that were out of date a little bit, and it doesn't mean they were doing anything wrong, it just means they didn't have a policy in place. So we operate under this policy. One thing they put in this policy, page 13, they had one small section that says, duty to intervene. All officers have an affirmative duty to intervene whenever they witness another officer using a chokehold or excessive force. In addition, officers shall report any instances of excessive force or use of a chokehold to a supervisor prior to the end of shift during which it occurred. That's what was in there for you, duty to intervene. We have our own standalone duty to intervene policy, which I'm sure a lot of agencies do. It's just not required that you have it. We had this for, it's been there for a few years, it was before I got here. We updated it again, June of this year, 2022, just made it a 3-year policy instead of a 1. So all this policy is a law enforcement officer has affirmative action, or affirmative duty to intervene on behalf of a citizen whose constitutional rights are being violated in the presence of the officers. And it just basically says just that if somebody sees an officer, whether on duty or off duty, that was one of the catches that the team, the sub-team has in this committee caught, was make sure it's off duty as well. If somebody's acting inappropriately, violating somebody's rights, or acting unethically, they have the duty to intervene. That can be verbally or physically intervene, and then they have the additional duty to report it to command staff. And it's a 3-page policy, and it lists what can happen if the way they can report to us and what happens if they don't. If they don't report to us, then they're just as guilty as the person doing it. That's the bottom line. So again, I'm sure we're not the only agency that has this, but it was just better than a 1 line or 1 paragraph.
Yep.
That's all.
And I think it was, my rationale for wanting this to be on the agenda is we know even agencies and communities around us have events that make the news, and that happens almost immediately. We start to get feedback, and we get, all law enforcement tends to be lumped in together. And I just know that there was a lot of work that happened on these policies. We spent a lot of time, as Chief just alluded to, talking about them. And more than anything, I know we don't have any public on the meeting today, but if people are watching this after, I really wanted them to hear that these are policies that exist. They're taken seriously by SAPD, and the expectations are high for this group of law enforcement officers in our community. So, any questions, concerns about any of that? Okay, so I did want to share something for this next piece of conversation, but I did fall out of the meeting, so do you mind giving me the passcode one more time? Or unless you think you can share, I think that's good too. And I'll tell you where I am. One of the things that happened, probably I think our last meeting or the one just before, we received some comment on arrest data that is posted on the SAPD website. So this isn't anything that isn't public data, but the question of the total number, and then I lost the webpage somehow. I'm just on a roll with technology. But we can continue to kind of look at that, and I'll try to bring it up. Oh no, there it is, I do have it, okay. So basically the graph that I'm looking at as I try to bring this up shows the SAPD 2021 arrests. And I just want to ask Chief, before I go any further, is there 2022 arrest data? This is an annual report, is that correct? Okay.
I mean, I can pull it anytime, but I'd rather not go into in depth until the end of the year, because it's a little bit cumbersome. I spent a lot of time yesterday and today breaking this down more so that in preparation for this meeting.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I couldn't do it more often,
Okay.
but
it's a manual process.
It's a manual process.
Yeah.
Pulling the data like initial pie charts, that's clicks of mouse keys and buttons. To do what I did and pull out every case is a little more in depth. So depending on how far you want to go, but just getting simple stats is not. Lieutenant Taller's a stat guy; he can pull that really quickly. But to do what I did for tonight's meeting is a little more.
And it is dependent, if I recall correctly, it is dependent totally on the officer's impression at the time of the arrest. Is that correct? So the officer, the perception. I'm sorry, determines the race at that time.
We can't ask that. Correct.
Right. But there's no, I guess, more or less than asking. It's there's no like confirmation from the person afterwards that then identifies it. Okay.
That's correct.
So
and you're not mandated to keep track of race data for arrests. You are only mandated to keep track of that for tickets and warnings.
But we do keep track of it for.
We do. Most agencies do. They just don't report it out anywhere because they're not mandated to. I'm guessing if they ask, they're not going to decline it.
Right.
So they aren't, but you're mandated to report it out to the state for tickets and warnings.
Okay. And so I'm still not able to get into the meeting. So I'll just verbally say it, and maybe, do you think you can go to the SAPD website and try to pull that up since you're in the meeting? So I'll talk about what's on the pie chart, and then I think Melinda will be able to pull it up. So it's just a breakdown of all of our 2021 arrests. Identified as white, there were 481 arrests. American Indian or Alaskan Native, and that is how it's listed here. There's 2, Asian, there were 3, and Black, there were 30. So the question that was posed to us in public comment, if not the last meeting, the one before, was that 30 number, because that seems like a high percentage compared to the overall arrests. Now, I want to start this conversation with just, we know that our stop data has improved, it looks good. There were no concerns about our stop data. So this is specifically related to arrests. So I just want to clarify that, because sometimes people get confused by that data, and I don't want there to be any confusion. So we just wanted to talk a little bit about why we might have that strong number of BIPOC or Black, identified as Black, folks who were arrested in 2021, because that's a pretty large percentage of the total. I think it's like 7%. Yeah, arrest data.
Those numbers are right, by the way. So you're calling the same numbers I have.
Were they more out-of-towners, these African-American people?
I couldn't tell you, because that's one thing that we don't track on that, is where they're from.
Oh, okay.
We do even on tickets and warnings, that's been a point of discussion for the 8 or 9 years we've been collecting it, is how many of those, particularly in Wilson area that are written on the interstate, how many of those are coming from out of town? It's never been kept track of.
Okay.
Never been kept. So they compare that, for the ticket warning, they compare it to traffic crashes, because they assume that traffic crashes are going to involve local people, which is still inaccurate. So, but nonetheless, on these arrests, I wrote down every one, which is all of 30,
Mm-hmm.
and I still don't know if they're from out of town, but I can give you more of a breakdown of each of these arrests, because that's what I did last days. Literally opened up it's only 30, but I opened up every case and I looked at it. Why is there more? So it's about 6%, right, of our arrests were Black individuals. Why that number is, I'm not going to suggest, but if I read this, what the breakdown was, maybe you'll come to your own conclusions, okay? So 30 of them there were 30 Black individuals arrested last year, 2021. One of those wasn't an arrest, one of them was a CHINS, which is a child in need of supervision. So that, why it was listed as an arrest, I don't know, but it wasn't. That was a person who, parents called and wanted them removed and put in state's custody, so that's not an arrest, that person, so that's one less. 4 of them were court ordered. So 4 of them we had no choice in, the court ordered, they get picked up, so those are 4 that were. 6 of them were felonies, felony arrests. Of these, I should start with this, 30 arrests, 27 were externally generated. So of the 30 arrests, 27 times we were called to these calls. The other remaining 3 were car stops. On all 3 of those car stops, we recognized the person, and that's why we stopped him. Recognized him, he had an active arrest warrant. Recognized person, they were known to be DLS, driving license suspended. Next time, recognized the person driving, known to be DLS, driving license suspended. So 27 times we were called to the complaint, 3 times we made car stops, but of those 3, we recognized them before the car stop. So.
And is driving with a license suspended arrestable for
Yes.
anybody?
Anyhow,
Okay.
yeah. So, again, if you take the 30 arrests, 4 court ordered, 1 is a CHINS, and the 6 felonies, that's 11 of them right there, but 3 of the other cases were from 1 fight alone, were 3 separate arrests. I don't know how to put it. The thing with arrests are, car stops, an officer has discretion, right? I can write somebody a ticket for going 1 mile an hour over the speed limit, or I can let somebody off going 30 miles an hour over the speed limit. I have discretion on a car stop. When it comes to a call, and we're called 27 times out of 30, if you read these, they're everything from trespass to, there's like 5 aggravated assaults on here. You have a victim, you have a complainant, you have a victim, you have the elements of a crime. You don't have a whole lot of discretion here, for a couple of reasons. Those big 3 is you have a complainant, a victim, and elements of a crime when you're called there. The other big thing you have is you have what's called Act 56 of the Academy, which means if you don't complete a case, you lose your certification. So if we go to something, we're called to it. Your discretion is a little less. If you have a victim, your discretion is a lot less. And if you have evidence of a crime and you don't follow through with it, and somebody reports that, you're losing your certification. So or potentially losing your certification. It's ultimately up to the Academy, but that's the problem with these, when I look at these, I can't tell you the specifics on all these, but I looked up all these calls to see how many we were called to versus how many we proactively went to. And we were called to all these, and I just kind of broke it down how many were felonies, which there's no discretion in felony that I can think of.
Yeah.
Drug arrests, there was 3, they were from 2020, they were lumped in 2021 because that's when they were actually located, but the cases were actually 2020 cases. I look at the majority of these are, other than the felonies, other than that, they're kind of aggravated assaults, domestic assaults, DUIs, but they're the ones that we, crashes, were 3 DUIs or crashes that were called there. And then trespass is a big one, and they're all stores. Stores that call and this person's been trespassed, they're back. You're stuck. You have a store, they're a victim, they called you have to deal with this. Northwestern Medical Center called us 3 times. 2 were males smashing equipment, refusing to leave, and 1 was a female that smashed equipment, refused to leave. School called us intoxicated, leaving with kids, DUI stop, it's stuff like that. I mean, I can't really tell you.
Sure.
But I did not look into the 481 white complaints or cases or arrests. I don't know what those were, but I'm gonna, I would assume from my experience, they're exactly the same as these. Exactly the same. I did look at the 3 and 2. The Asian, 3 arrests, 2 were externally generated. Externally generated, by the way, means that somebody called us to it, and 1 was a car stop. The externally generated, some jail called us. A guy that was in jail for domestic called his girlfriend, the victim, 300 times, violating conditions of release. So that's an easy one. 1 was a call into a citizen, the car over the road, resulting in DUI. The other one was on patrol, so that's proactive. On patrol, observe erratic operation was a DUI. American Indian, and by the way, these categories are set up by the state. We don't pick these categories. American Indian, 2 arrests, both were externally generated. 1 was a store call. There's a vehicle parked in a store being built. It's a new mobile on Lake Street was being built, it wasn't constructed yet. The store was there running at night. We checked on it, and there was a DUI. And the second one was a call for a hotel, the one on Lake Street, person acting violently, and we were called there, and we had the rest out of that. So I don't know how much more to explain them. It's there's very little discretion when we are called to a case, and all of these we were called there except 3, and we recognize the person driving that shouldn't have been driving on all 3 of them.
So I know I have a couple specific questions, but I want to give the group an opportunity to ask any questions that you have on the data or on what Chief just presented to us.
I guess the only thing is, because I was trying to get this pulled up, and I felt like I heard you talking about the 30 individuals that we were looking at don't necessarily reside in our community, right?
That I can't tell you, right? We don't know. I mean, if I could pull deeper into these, I pulled these up and I looked at the dispatch notes, which tells you who called, when they called, what the result was. I did, and then if I want to go that far, I'd have to look at the suspect's name and see where they resided.
Okay.
And the issue there is, there's a lot of people that move in and out of this area. I can use my daughter example. That's in San Diego. She didn't change her address. That's the same as people coming here. They're visiting. Like my daughter's been there 6 months. She's still visiting technically. So that happens here too, right? So I would still be a hard time telling you where they live.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to clarify because with the work I do, there's stuff that obviously I can't get into it, but I know of some individuals that would have been arrested that are not even from the state, much less the community.
I would dare say a lot of these probably are not from the state, but it doesn't mean they've been here for a year.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's just helpful for us, or even for me, to wrap my mind around when I look at the percentages that were given at the meeting months ago of the volume of people versus the volume of residents in the community. And the first thing that I thought of is like, hold on, I know that there's a few of those individuals that are not residents of the state, much less the communities. So it's something for me to have in the back of my mind when I'm looking at percentages, because it doesn't necessarily mean some of these numbers are from the percentages of civilians who actually live and reside here.
No, I would say it's
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't on the wrong track.
I think it's very accurate. It's no different than the homeless population we're dealing with right now. The large majority of our calls right now revolve around the mental health issue of homeless, and the majority of the population does not reside, or is not from St. Albans, and has not been in St. Albans very long. It's not going to be in St. Albans very long.
Right. Okay.
Go ahead, Minnie.
Yeah, well, when I heard 30, my immediate thought are these people residents of St. Albans or Franklin County area. And then my second thought is, wait a minute, the total amount of black people here right now that are residents who live here is 32. So if we have 30, we're like, whoa.
I can answer one more question for you.
I wasn't arrested, so.
So I did break down the duplicates though, just to see,
32.
of those 30, 22 were the same person.
Ooh,
So
Wow.
that cuts it
That
down
is
to
really
8.
important information.
Yeah,
So,
that is,
um,
that changes.
It breaks down, so I still can't tell you where those are from,
yeah.
but it takes it down, so I guess you could say 30 arrests, but actually 22 people.
Ah.
So,
22
That
people
does
or
change
22 was the
things a
same person?
22 people.
Oh, okay.
22 people.
Sorry, 30 arrests, so
Hmm.
a few of them have been arrested multiple times.
Oh, okay, so but 22 individuals have been arrested 30 times, okay.
It beats sleeping outside in the cold to get a better cut and toenails.
Yeah.
There's also people look at that, you listen and you're like, whoa, okay.
Yeah, like I said, two of the, one of the calls had 3 arrests, no, 2 of the calls had 3 arrests separately, so six of these arrests were 3 calls.
Hmm. Okay.
So I don't, like I said, stats are stats, and I can pull all kinds of stuff, but I don't know how much different I can look at it as in my position, other than for us, discretion is in the car stops. Discretion is not in this per se. It shouldn't be anyway, because you have to work for the victim and the caller, and you have to work with the evidence and the elements of crime presented to you. Car stop is where I been in a leadership position for many years in both agencies, and been called to the carpet on carpets for car stops at the other agency. That's where you should see discretion questioned, is in car stops, because you literally have all the discretion in the world on car stops,
Yeah.
all of it. You make the decision to stop, you make the decision what you're gonna do with that stop. When you're called something, your discretion is a lot less.
Other questions or comments before I ask my 2? So, I know that the out-of-town element is real, and I think that the data somewhat supports that. But I do, one of my questions is, I would be curious to know, and maybe this isn't data you can get, and I don't wanna make more work for people, but how many calls didn't end in arrest, right? And that,
Yeah, that's a lot.
Is it a
We have
lot?
12,000 calls a year.
okay,
So, estimated 12,000 calls, averages, so we had 14,000 in pre-COVID, so what was that, 2019?
yes,
Full year was 2019?
Yeah,
pre-COVID? So
what part
I
of
think
it?
we were running about 14.5, that was my first year here.
okay,
2020, we dropped a bit, COVID actually did what we hoped to do, but not what we expected, it actually dropped
Yeah.
a little bit. I can tell you as of today, I just happened to look, we're at 7,800 calls today. So if you have the rest of the year, I'm gonna guess we're gonna hit 10.
okay,
So we lost a town, last year, so I say 10,000, so I'll tell you right now, we've got 10,000 calls
Yeah.
that we're gonna have.
because I know, I think the merits of the arrest are the most important part, or the merits of the crime are the most important part of this discussion, because if people are calling, and that's maybe the concern that people who are members of the BIPOC community have, who live here, is that are police gonna be called erroneously because of the color of somebody's skin? And I think that that's a real fear that people have, so I don't wanna minimize it, but understanding that it's the merits of the situation that's happening is important to know, because I think that's, we may have some work to do as a community to tear down some of the systemic pieces, but I think it's really important that the commitment, and my understanding from how Chief just explained this, is that SAPD is going to make arrest as dictated by some very clear a rule book, for lack of a better term, that they have to follow. And there is no discretion when you show up on scene. There's no discretion with warrants. There's no discretion with the automatic. If somebody's drunk, you don't put them back in their car and let them drive. So, I think those are important facts, and I appreciate you doing all that work. I'm sure that it was a tremendous amount of work. My next question, and again, I don't know that you'd be able to ice this out, but did any of those calls involve both a white person and a black person, and were the punishments any different?
The punishments aren't up to us.
Okay.
So that's strictly a court thing, so I can't answer that question. I know there's.
I'm sorry, the
discussion
arrest.
about that.
I said the wrong
The
term.
arrest shouldn't be any different, no. So
Okay.
the elements are the elements. That
Yep.
dictates whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony. That's the elements. White versus black involved in the same incident, I can tell you for certain that this large, one of these large fights, because I'm here, large scale fight, there was like 2 of them. One of them amounted in 3 arrests related to black. That one amounted in 4 arrests white as well. There were 7 people.
Okay.
They all got arrested. Another one that was a large scale fight, one black individual got arrested, KCP, and 3 white people got arrested, so that was just, we had 2 big fights that happened in the same
Yeah.
location. So that's about the best I can answer that. Most of these other ones were a single person, they were trespass, or aggravated assault, and there's one victim and one, it was exactly what you'd expect, with aggravated assault, it was a domestic relationship. So there was only one other person there, and so one suspect and one victim. But most of these, and then DLS, DUI is just one person. So the fights are the ones that, and I did actually pull those up because that's how it was written in there. The dispatch
Yeah.
notes, large fight. So I did look them up to see
Okay.
what it was. And they were DCs, which are disorderly conduct, which typically is like a catch-all when you get there, and it's just a melee, and you really can't determine who was the instigator in it, and everybody's just going. And one of them I have written here, large scale fight with bats, and everybody there was armed with something.
Yeah.
So, a lot of times you can figure out in a fight who started it, but there are times you just can't figure out who started it. So,
Yeah.
And they're not talking to you anyway, so nobody wants to be that one.
So I know I feel reassured by that explanation and how we've broken down this data, but I'm not a member of the affected community, so I don't want to speak to that. I know we don't have public on, so my hope is that if folks do watch this recording and they're hearing me right now, because we were talking to my future self, that if you do have questions, that you submit them to our email, that you enter them into public comment, because I don't want to put this to rest, but that's the wrong term. I want to be able to say that we're moving in the right direction, but I also want to recognize that there may be things that we don't understand, and that I do want people to bring them forward so that we can do a deeper dive, but I am reassured by this conversation that we're following, the SAPD is following the protocols and procedures appropriately in a balanced and non-objective way.
Would you mind giving them the email, sending them the email that they should do any report or whatever to?
I'm gonna ask Melinda to do that. Because,
So the email address you're saying?
yes.
Yeah, so if people have any comments that they want to provide, you can email P.A. Let me just make sure I get it right too, because it's been a minute. It is P.A.B. at St. Albans, Vermont. Let me pull it up on the screen
I
as
think
well.
it's on our morning agenda too.
It is, it's on the agenda, it's on the
So-
website, we try to put it on everything, so let me just, if you can see it here and it's highlighted, so P.A.B. at STALBANSVT.com, so StAlbansVT.com.
If I could just make one comment on something you just said, so, you're right, we can't control what we get called to, but we have a fair and impartial policing policy,
Oh,
which
yes.
we did review. So,
Yep.
I don't know how many agencies have this, but they should all have it now.
Yeah.
That's not state mandated, me, the state didn't put it out, but they do really want you to all have, they're strongly suggesting every agency,
Yeah.
and I think most do, if not all, but state police had it for years, so when I came over here, I brought one over and we adopted it, that was one of the first
Yes,
things we did.
I remember.
So in that fair and impartial policing policy, it's designed two parts. It's one designed so that your officers know the rules of engagement with everybody they deal with fairly and impartially. But the second caveat is that if somebody calls and says, I have a suspicious car sitting at this location and I want you to come check out this race of individual, and that's one of their indicators, like I don't like the way this person looks.
Yeah.
Because of simply because of we don't respond to that. But part of the policy dictates that our officer will explain to that person why we don't respond to that.
Okay,
Because we're trying to cut back on those interactions that are non-criminal,
right.
just because somebody, so that's part of the policy of that. So we have had those calls, and
Yeah.
we got one like 3 days ago, so we don't respond to those calls, so, and it's documented,
Okay.
Where do those calls go? I mean, are they referred to any
nowhere,
place? Nowhere?
nowhere, they're just people simply calling, if somebody calls and says, you have to look at totality, if somebody calls at, whatever, you call at 3 a.m. and say that, hey, I'm home, there's a car in my driveway, I don't recognize the car, somebody's getting out of the car and coming around the back of my house, that we're gonna respond to that. But if you call at 1 in the afternoon and say there's a car in front of my house and there's a black male sitting in it, okay, we're not gonna go to that, but people, believe it or not, will call, and they won't call some black males, they'll call white male, but if somebody calls them specifically, calls out a race, we will have the discussion
Yeah.
about why we aren't responding, because believe it or not, some people will push on why aren't you doing your job, why aren't you responding, we need somebody here now, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
And that a
Yeah.
discussion goes along with that, but we have had exactly those calls, so.
Sure.
And I had totally forgotten about that fair and impartial policing
Yeah,
policy,
good
so I'm
policy.
glad you brought that up, and I guess, maybe let's bring that to the next meeting, just to refresh us all to that, because we've had this discussion today, and I do think that was pretty early on, and I wanna give the chance to the public to revisit that, just as we did today for use of force and, the, duty to intervene. That's really important information, and I do, that those calls are still happening in our community is troubling to me, and that's sort of the bigger systemic work that we have to do. We're not gonna solve it all at this committee, but I am reassured.
Well, I don't mean to say that we get those calls just based on race at all. I'm just saying, it happens, we get those calls all the time, so people are a little on edge about everything right now.
Oh,
There's all
gotcha.
the vehicle thefts and everything else.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if it comes down to if there's something in their description or the complaint that suggests they're elevated because of race, that's when we'll have a discussion with them. But
Yeah.
people are generally calling in everything right now. But
And
there are
I,
times that I think that comes into people's minds, whether or not they're implicit or whatever it is, or biased.
yeah,
So,
and I think that's part of the bigger work as a community we have to do, but I appreciate that discussion. I appreciate, your work on that and taking, the discussion very seriously. I, appreciate that, more
Jamie,
than
I
can
just wonder if that's on a side note, is a bit of data that we could use with the community needs health assessment. I mean, when you're describing that, the majority of the minorities that you described were impacted by substance abuse, and then equating that to the equity
Yeah.
to access.
Yeah, I think that's.
what do you mean
important.
in our stats?
No, we're doing,
Oh, yeah, that's something
Let's
else,
say-
that a lot of
Sidebar.
the individuals that you
Yeah.
discussed, it involves
Okay.
substance abuse, so that's a larger community issue.
we're trying to form an accountable community for
Yeah.
health that
Yeah.
really looks at some of these system problems and tries to address them. So, I'm feeling reassured. I look forward to comment on this, but is there any additional comment from the board at this time, or are we comfortable to move on?
Well, I know, in my little way, I'm fine. First of all, sisters wear wigs. I could be here with a straight hair and then go home and got another function, wear a curly wig. And people be, you're not supposed to be here, really? And then I gotta show my ID. Your hair was curly this morning, and I got it all full of them. I could go home and come back straight too. So these are the teachable moments that if you don't know it. And one young lady, she lives in the town. She just moved in. She used to get the sheriff called on her because she would go to work and whatever, and then she changed the wig, and then she comes back. Oh, she has a bunch of women living there. How many? 3. And then and then she said one was curly hair, one was straight hair, and then one had no hair. I said to her, nothing to worry about. 3 and 1 is the same person.
Yeah.
So these are some of the details that if you don't know, you will make these accusations and allegations.
Right.
So again, I say it's teachable moments for all concerned.
Yeah.
Know the culture, know the history. I got a drawer full of wigs.
And ask questions if you're not sure,
Yeah, if
right?
you're not sure, right.
Assume positive intention until otherwise. It sounds like you're doing a little bit of that if you get those
We are,
calls.
we're getting inundated with calls in general, not speaking about any
Sure.
particular race of people, because we have a huge homeless population here right now, and
Yeah.
they're everywhere, and a lot of them are dealing with some serious mental health
Yeah.
issues, and it's causing us to get called multiple times a day to multiple areas because people are nervous, and it is what we are responding to a lot of those regardless of what the people look like, because they are causing people to be nervous or yelling and screaming. It's just a typical mental health issue, and it's unfortunate, but St. Albans City is overrun right now. There's, I could speak about that for weeks.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Chris and I are in plenty of meetings to continue to hear that there's just not enough capacity.
Yeah.
Right.
And not just in Franklin County, this
There's
is
not.
across the state. We need housing.
All right. Well, I've now fallen behind on my agenda.
Sorry.
No, that was a great discussion, and I would have that kind of discussion all day. But I was gonna try to keep us to an hour as much as possible, so I'll try to be brief on the next agenda item, an update on the new member status. So we did receive an application and submitted a recommendation forward for Marcus, who's sitting behind us as a member of the public today. And there was basically, I talked to the city manager this morning, a perfect storm of things that have delayed his application moving forward. It was inadvertently warned before an interview had happened, which is not the way that city council wishes it to move forward. But it put a spotlight on the question of residency that also had come up with another committee and had some pretty significant backlash with it. So I appreciate that there's, everybody wants to make sure that our committees are filled with folks who have interest and involvement in St. Albans City. I appreciate that. And then there was a couple other significant issues with other committee membership that took up a great deal of the time of the summer. So as I understand it, in speaking with Dom, it's just a matter of getting a new interview set up for Marcus on the books. He'll have that interview and then they will let us know their decision. What I asked for was that it not take too much longer, because if for some reason, and I don't see any reason why Marcus does not or chooses to opt out after taking this long, but if anything happens, I almost think we have to probably advertise it in a new and different way, and I would want to get on that pretty quickly so that we could look for new membership no later than January. But I'm hopeful that that will not come to that. I just want to say that out loud to make sure that we're all prepared.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at.
Same, yeah, very hopeful it won't come to that.
Yeah, and I have and Dom was hopeful too, so I'm not suggesting that there was anything negative, but the council is full of individuals, and so, you never know which way the human factor is gonna go, so.
Yeah.
Any questions on that though, concerns?
Thank you.
Thanks for
Okay.
that explanation.
And I will stay on top of it, probably, Dom will lose my number. Cause I'll sort of keep bugging him, but he did ask me to, so I think we're all on the same page. All right, so moving on into an update on the embedded crisis clinician, and that's something that I think has happened between the last time we met and now, the safety roster, which I saw was highlighted in the buddy walk that you mentioned earlier. So, Chief, I'll look to you to give updates on those things, and then folks can ask questions.
Good news and bad news. The safety roster's going great. We're getting quite a bit buy-in on that. We have been very much kind of enveloped into the autism community locally here.
And can you just explain the safety roster a little bit?
Yeah, so this is something that actually came to us from, we have an autistic individual that spends a great deal of time at our police department, daily, every day, 5 days a week, comes in. And his parents are very, very engaged in the autism community, and they actually came to us with this idea. And we had, Jason had heard of it, of course, before, and we let them, they want to promote it, they want our help in promoting it. And what it is it's a way to keep track of, not just people with autism, but people with any type of disability where it might be helpful for any first responder, whether it's law enforcement or fire department or ambulance, to be aware of their special circumstances that might help you interact with them. And it's a form that people can opt to fill out and put on file at this dispatch, because we dispatch for every county, every agency in this county, whether it's fire, rescue, or police, we dispatch for them. So it made sense. So if they opt to fill this form out, they give it to our dispatchers. And if somebody happens to run this individual's name, so if they get called in as a missing person, which is a lot of times what we deal with with these people that have these disabilities, we can type in their name and we'll see, this form will come up, it'll list who the emergency contact is, but more importantly, it'll list what they're drawn to, what they don't like, what triggers them, and all this information. So it's like a 3-page document. It's not a lot to fill out. It's voluntary. It's just, we're more or less offering the database, and it's grown legs.
And it's getting participation from
Very
the
much.
community.
Yep.
That's great.
Can you send that to this group?
Mhm.
I heard about it, but I'd like to send it out
Yep.
to a lot of different people.
Yeah,
That's good.
I think it's something we can get.
But yeah, it's doing well. It's picking up more and more participants all the time. People are hand delivering it. People are sending it in. Again, I don't think we haven't had any pushback. And people think it's like a privacy thing. 'Cause it's not. It's on them to do it, and nobody can see it. Our system is so well protected. I don't think there's ever been a breach since I've been doing this 23 years. The state police in here with this system. So even if they did, what are they seeing? There's no social security number. There's nothing. It's the person's
Right.
name and what may trigger them and help us in dealing with them. So that's what it is. That's the good news. The embedded crisis clinician, I have no good news. We have interviewed, and we have nobody. So,
The plus is you're getting resumes.
this is proven to be, and we knew it was going to be this way. I'm not naive. This has proven to be a difficult task to find the right person with the right background. I mean by a clean background, and that can do this job. And we'll wait as long as we have to. So Sam's going to be picking up some more hours. She's going to start, I think we're heading in the direction where she's going to start working on call basis too at night and weekends. because she's willing to, and we could use the help because we are inundated with calls right now. So, we aren't gonna, and I'm not suggesting mistakes were made with some of the other agencies that got some, but some have been arrested since they put in these positions, and some have been just plain let go, and, we're gonna be really picky about what we get. So, I've been spoiled with Nick at VSB, and
Yeah.
been spoiled with Sam down here.
Right.
And if it takes time, it takes time. We did not expect it to take this much time. We literally started looking in January,
Yeah.
as soon as the budget was passed, and, we've interviewed, said, a few. And we made good choices on not taking them. So,
Yeah, I mean,
as it came out, right
Yeah,
after we did.
person.
Yeah.
It is what it is, yeah. So anyway, that's what I have on that. They're still actively looking, there's nothing holding us back, it's just personnel.
It led me to a question just in general about, something you said earlier triggered it for me. When there's a victim, does the crisis clinician interact with them as well? Or
Yes.
anybody at the scene,
Yeah.
right?
So, yeah, you're talking about an arrestable situation.
Yeah.
Typically, that's more where she interacts. In
Yeah.
this case, she, because I'm working with Sam.
Yeah, sure.
So Sam will interact at the beginning, if it's escalated out, to help us de-escalate, to
Yeah.
get that person with us controllably. And then she'll shift, because then there's no more for her to do with that
Sure.
suspect, because then his day is already, or her day is already decided for them.
Yeah,
And then she'll shift over to the victim, because that's where the need is. And we've been dealing with a really, horrible assault that happened Sunday for 3 days now.
Mm.
Sam's completely wrapped into that, even though that's been done for 3 days.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the follow-up she does, because that has some mental health component to it.
Because I know, I think Sam was embedded with SAPD at this time, but this was a different agency that doesn't have a crisis clinician. And we have had some tough interactions professionally, to the point where I almost got arrested for obstruction of justice because there was a victim who was, I know, right, that I can be hired for years, yeah, I know. But it was, it was a victim, and there was no warrant, and HIPAA is really abundantly clear on this stuff, and it was a difficult situation, but I just, now that I know more about this program, I'm thinking, wow, if Sam had been involved, or someone like Sam or Nick from VSP, it could have been an easy phone call to say, can this person go interact with them, and then we'll get you what you need, which in this case was a cell phone. So I just, thinking about the landscape changing and people being more engaged with what their rights are, having someone like Sam, I feel like is so important to,
Well, it is. We could use 3 of her, but
yeah,
can't get 2, so.
I think the state's also looking at investing more funding as far as just like mobile capacity and mobile crisis.
Yeah.
We have some of that now, and I think we could all safely say that there's more need for that. And that is one of the funding priorities at the state level, and there's been federal funding for it, so I'm hoping
nice.
that could also complement it.
And for anybody in a first responder role, or in a health role, or an education role, sometimes it's a tough line to walk, and I walked it. My kids were really disappointed that it didn't work out, that I did not get arrested. They thought it would have been cool, but I mean,
See, when you go back to the whole television thing.
but
The question is, would they bail you out?
Yeah, no, probably
Probably
not.
not. She's gonna be alright.
I don't know her, lose her number, but I just think, it probably would have avoided that whole situation. And I just,
Yeah.
as I put this on the agenda, that event came back to me, and I thought, wow, that person, I was protecting them. I have no idea what's the situation, and having someone like a crisis clinician who can
Right.
really engage with them in that way and help them be successful without being overwhelmed by armed officers is super
Yeah,
helpful.
she's really good. I mean, we've had a lot of bad things happen the last few weeks with drugs, and she's been great with all that. And
That's
she's
amazing.
good with family members even after the fact with those types of situations as well, so.
Well, I'm glad that you're waiting for the right person though, because there's
Yeah.
nothing worse than getting the wrong person
No.
and having to back out from
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I appreciate
That's why we're
this
sitting
work.
here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So, I just, curious question, do you think that more of the drug-related and mental illness-related numbers are up now?
Big time.
Mm-hmm.
It's, the number is, I've said this for the last many years, it's got worse and worse, but I would say the last 2 years have been by far the biggest spike I've ever seen. And the population here with mental health is higher than it's ever been. So I don't think it's, again, it goes back to where's everybody from? I think we have a huge number, when the federal money came, the state money came for the rehouse the homeless population. And I'm not suggesting, again, that was wrong, but when you bring in, a large majority of who came to the local hotels were not local people.
Right.
They stayed.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's gotta live somewhere, and I completely get that. But it brought a lot of mental health issues here. that we were ill-equipped to deal with. NCSS can do what they can do and only do so much. And when you have an adult that doesn't want the services, it falls back on us. Everything falls back on the police when somebody doesn't want help. When we get called to those, and again, we have Sam, that's great. But even with Sam, there's a lot of people that won't talk to Sam. I mean, I sit here and I praise her up and down all day, but the bottom line is they're adults that make their decision. There's a lot of adults that have been down the mental health road a million times. And as soon as Sam opens her mouth, they know exactly what she is. And they don't want to talk to us, and they don't want to talk to her because they know. And that's unfortunate, but that is the reality of it too. I mean, as much as I praise her and she does a phenomenal job, there are simply people out there who have been down that road in every state, across from California to here, and they aren't going to talk to her.
Well, that, and you couple that with our mental health agency throughout COVID, we're down 100 positions.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so when you think about that, and that's across the continuum of care, that's a lot of families that
Yeah.
prior to COVID we were
Yes.
able to serve.
The numbers are crazy. The mental health, I can't, it's every day, a majority of our, I'd say, go as far as say, a majority of our calls every day and night are mental health related. A majority. Not just a portion, but a majority.
And COVID, I think, at least I know from
Yeah.
healthcare, COVID has created a lot more mental health concerns for folks after 2 years of isolation for some. It's starting to come out, and so it's the perfect storm of all of these things, and our housing, we just don't have the capacity, like she said earlier, Melinda said earlier, we need to figure out some different solutions, so that it doesn't push back to law enforcement, and that's on the city and the communities and the planning commissions and all of the groups trying to figure out what the next moves are, and funding to get more folks.
I just heard
That
it just
and the level of
extended.
violence is.
That's
definitely
high. I
uh,
just heard the
What
funding just came
violence?
through.
Level of violence, I mean, we're seeing so many more violent
Much more
situations.
violent situation. But I just heard housing just came through for another $20 million, just came through for housing, so.
That's great.
Yeah,
It's
if
great,
there's.
and I agree, but it brings another flood of people, then that housing is such a rotating basis, that
Yeah.
like, I can speak for the hotels that we go to every day, multiple times.
Yeah,
If you violate the rules a few times, as you can probably speak to this, then they're out there, they don't return to where they originated.
Right.
They're still here.
Yeah.
It's just no place to live. And I'm not putting down people at all. Everybody deserves a place to live. But when they don't have places, now they're in this community. And a lot of them brought a lot of baggage with them. And it, again, comes back on us as
Yeah.
just what we do for
right,
it.
well, ESD will put them wherever there's an empty hotel.
Right, and there's none right now
That
throughout the
could be-
state.
There's
As of
none.
noon
There-
today,
there what?
there was zero, as of noon today, there were 0 hotels
Zero.
across
Yeah.
the entire state available to take anybody.
But they'll just say, somebody from here can go to Rutland, Bennington,
But there's
wherever.
And it pushes back.
And
on
then,
hospitals.
if they get
So
kicked
it's
out, they're like
It's a
stuck.
bit of an issue right now. but
And it's
none-
hard to follow up too, because like so with my recovery coach in the emergency department hat on, when I'm responding to people in the ED, and they're homeless and they don't have cell phones, I want to follow up with them, and how do you do that? So I try to get creative. If they can, I'd send them an email or whatever and have access, but it's a real challenge. We had access to phones last year that through a federal grant, a core grant, and I was able to give people a cell phone that had prepaid minutes for a length of time so we could help them get stable and then they can communicate, but those haven't been available for months now. And we've also seen with our patient base that some patients that didn't have any real underlying mental health issues that we had seen prior to COVID now have developed those because of COVID. And then we also have seen people who just historically didn't have substance use issues that developed them during COVID. And I'll try not to get on the soapbox about this, but people could have alcohol delivered to their homes when COVID hit, but they couldn't reach their providers, any providers. So we delivered them the problem to their doorstep, but we couldn't give them the solution that they need for. And that's a big driver for this substance use summit is the founder of it, who made me a co-founder, his biggest passion is focusing on the intersection between mental health and substance use, providers partnering with law enforcement, judges, the legal system, state's attorneys. We even had the opportunity to meet with Superior Judge Sone. Sadly, we chose the one day of the year that they all go to a mandatory training, so none of them can make it. But next year, this is going to be an annual event, and that's the biggest goal, is to look at having those embedded positions, having those partnerships, because so many individuals who don't have a place to sleep and don't have a phone to receive phone calls and to know when their appointments are and don't have transportation to get there, that's the challenge we're seeing. And a lot of people, there's a lot more people on that list, and many of them just fell into hard times too. The home was condemned. Many homes were condemned because finally it was discovered that they were inhabitable. Chris is familiar with that because we talk about that a lot on our new meetings. and they just have no place to go. We're in a position in our community where even people with children, a mom can call with a child today and say, I have no place to go, and there's no place to put that mom and child, except on the streets. We have people in their 70s. So the challenge is we need more resources, and that's a big reason for that summit is we've invited all of the housing partners, all the recovery, like we want to find creative ways, and we're gonna have to get a little bit more grassroots on how we make it happen until we get the resources. And Danielle said exactly, we are understaffed, and I say we as in community providers for healthcare, nonprofits, housing. Everybody's understaffed, so we gotta get more creative on how can we better care for the people in our community. But
And
yeah,
further upstream.
We might have some money through United Way for cell phones, so if you wanna.
And we have cell
thank you.
phones.
Let me do
Yeah.
For our folks that, send them our way. We spent so much money on cell phones during COVID. And actually, it's funny because it was not an essential item at Walmart. So they had them blocked off.
Yes.
We had to get the police department to come with us. So we could buy
Busted
cell
the
phones.
phones?
Yeah.
So our way of doing it was getting 5 and then going back in.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And now
And
we
they
can only
are-
buy 2 at a time, so we're constantly going and buying.
And they are
then
essential,
they're gone.
Wi-Fi is
Right away.
essential, I mean, those are all things, if you
Crazy.
don't have those,
Yeah.
But yeah,
you're
medical-
already behind.
Yeah, medical is only telemedicine
Yeah.
until recently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Danielle and Chris. I'll probably. be
And
reaching out.
homeschool, people at homeschool, and they didn't have internet, it's
Right.
like,
Yeah, I agree
and
with that.
teachers still try to grade them or make them, the parent, say that the parent was unfit. It's on internet, and this person don't have internet.
Mhm.
Right, and maybe they have it, but it's not a good enough connection because we're in a
Right.
rural state, so.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate this conversation, everybody. 3 minutes over, I apologize, but we'll go ahead and keep doing the good work that we're all trying to do to improve our community and the systems. And with that being said, I will move to public comment. And I think you're the only public here.
Sorry, I'm late. Well, I just have to say that it's, when we had a break, I've been looking forward to us gathering together again because I see how necessary this is to the community. So I appreciate you all. And I've had conversations with Chief Lamoff throughout the summer here, and but it's been good. It's been good to really connect with the community and be present. Looking forward to what the future holds.
And thank you for being at the recovery block party.
Oh, sure.
With your beautiful family. That was wonderful.
And I know we've talked about scheduling as we go to adjourn, and so we'll do some of those conversations via email to figure out when our next meeting is, because I did not add it to the agenda, and then we will warn it appropriately. But just to remind folks, we had suggested we move to an every other month component, depending on if there was a need for more.
You had a question over there?
Oh, I just want to put a little plug in for something that the task force, Domestic and Sexual Violence Task Force and others are sponsoring a forum for the state's attorney candidates next Wednesday night here at City Hall, 6:30 to 8:30.
Okay.
So this is the first time we've had a change in state's attorneys
For a
long
really long
time.
time.
So this is an important,
But,
Yes, he's
just-
retired.
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
he retired.
oh,
Done already?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's left already.
yeah.
But, so that's out there.
Okay,
I
That's
have
great
a
to
flyer,
know.
I can send it out to folks too.
thank you.
Okay.
All right.
The detail.
So tentatively,
Oh,
we will
there
plan
it
our
is.
next meeting for November, but I know that one falls around Thanksgiving, so I just wanna be mindful of that, so we'll tentatively plan for
I will
that.
be seeing that on
It's still better than
Zoom.
Christmas.
It's still better than
than
Christmas.
December.
December, yeah, it's still better than December, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I
Because
mean,
I
I
turn
don't
into
cook,
a
so it
lunatic
works
in
for me.
December, so, okay, well, we'll plan on the November meeting, but if we change our mind, we will certainly warn the community and it will be well publicized. So thank you, everybody, have a great night.
Thank you.
I make a motion to end the meeting.
Oh my God, I forgot. Thank you for being a second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.